Tuesday, a good Mars Day. And today is Mars Day, so yes, we will be going to war as our guests will be taking some tough questions. This is the sequel to our show on Christ Is Belial. I feel it will be like The Godfather 2 or Superman 2. It will be better than the original, but let's see what happens. And yes, my name is Miguel Connor, and I am your pompatus of Gnosis, your madman across the waters of creation, your smell of colitas rising through the air of a world gone mad. So again, it is truly an honor and a pleasure to be joined by Nicholas to discuss more about his ideas that you can find in his excellent paper, Christ Is Belial, the Fraud That Reset Time. Nicholas, or Nick, I'll call you Nick. How you doing? And thanks for coming back to the show.
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Miguel. Good to see you again, Vance.
Yes. Vance, how are you doing? How you doing?
Oh, I'm hanging in there. A little work weary, but ready to tackle this subject. Grab it by the horns.
Literally, yeah. Literally. Yes, awesome. For the audience, if you didn't know, because it's a special show and Nick wants to get some feedback and see what's going on, you don't have to give us a super chat unless, of course, you want to support the show, which we really always appreciate. Help grow this Red Pill Cafeteria. But we will take your questions regardless from the audience. Vance will prune and collate your questions for Nick, and yeah, it should be a fun show. And I guess we should start with a little recap, Nick, which is tell us about your paper and what's the summary and your thesis.
Well, it started as a paper in December of last year because I wanted to release it in a way that people could respond to. I got nothing. I got a huge turnout. I've been on academia.edu for a long time. Never posted anything, but I've seen what other responses people get when they do. It didn't get the response that my paper got. A lot of people that read it, probably 1,500, like in the first month. And that was unheard of. Even according to them, it was in the top 0.05% of papers that were released. But not just, it was crickets and tumbleweeds as far as anybody trying to contest it. And I decided to expand it about 6 months later. I had this epiphany during May the 4th, be with you, about the fourth philosophy that's being covered up by the Bible. And I decided that that would be the best date, even if it really wasn't ready yet, to release this as a book so that it would have a publication date of May the 4th to really punch the fourth philosophy message. But this book is uncontested. Currently, there is no Christian apologist who will stand up in the light of day in a format like this and just have a discussion about the links that have been made between the fisher of men in the New Testament, Mark, first chapter, 17th verse, which is important for those that understand the depth of 153. That's where we first see the fisher of men use that language. And that was the 17th verse of the first gospel that was ever released, ever. So they thought it was important to put it in as the 17th thing that was ever said in the New Testament. And so that language has been sitting in front of scholars for over 75 years in the Damascus document, the most popular and uncontested document of the Dead Sea Scrolls. And I believe Codex 4.
If you're thinking about getting a contour pillow, you need to hear this first. So I almost made the dumbest mistake of my life.
Point 12 through 19, we find all the language necessary to make the connection between the three nets of Belial. And he's the only one that fishes for men and treats them like fish in the whole Dead Sea Scrolls. And in the New Testament, the only one who that role is Jesus and the people that become his followers, what I would call the sons of Belial. And the nets that they cast over the right side of the boat, that whole language about casting the nets over the right side of the boat has to do with the Damascus document, talking about the nets of ritual pollution, spiritual fornication, and money. government money, those nets being cast in the form of a looking righteous, cast over the right side of the boat. Because each of those nets were designed to capture far more than just the believers. They were meant to capture the believer and the unbeliever alike, which answers the riddle of 2 Corinthians 6:15, when Paul compares Christ to Belial and asks us what harmony is there between these two. And then what does the believer and the unbeliever have in common? I mean, he's begging us to discover what was sitting in front of scholars for 75 years in the Damascus document. And there the fisher of men sat all this time, nobody discovering what Paul did there. And Paul didn't need to believe in demons to know why this was important. Paul just needed to understand that 60 to 70% of the people that he was trying to win over did. And so he needed a vehicle that had legs, and he gave it a vinyl wrap that lasted 2,000 years so far. And I'm going to take it off.
But Nick, excuse me, everybody. Let's do that more or less a top summary of your thesis, because you've already broken down and given us some fascinating data and insights. But so the idea is simple. Well, simple. I'm trying to keep it simple, but the idea that what we're teaching, the Bible, is sort of a bait and switch, for lack of better words. It's not Jesus. It was switched out for this demon and being Belial. You say Belial. Let's see what Vance has. He'll be the tiebreaker of the pronunciation. Maybe he'll have a third pronunciation. We'll see. But it was switched out because this was a religion that was co-opted by the Roman Empire and the Nascent Christian Church. It wasn't even a good religion. It's a dark religion of money and power and the twisting of time. And so Jesus is really Belial. It's a bait and switch. And there were the original teachings of, like you say, the fourth philosophy of James the Just and Judas the Galilean that are the real philosophy, but all this stuff got put up. So the Bible, what we have is just this counterfeit mind virus that just supports our simulation and keeps us trapped.
Yes, it's what the Native Americans referred to as Wetico. Mm-hmm. Every culture has a name for it. And so whether you believe in it or not, it doesn't matter. This thing has legs. And if you understand the snares that it uses, that's where the real epiphany is waiting for everyone to wake up. The Jewish person that thinks that this isn't important, that doesn't believe in demons, the Christian person that doesn't think this is the Muslim person that doesn't think this is important and doesn't think that the demons matter, they need to remember that their religion has no foundation whatsoever in reality if demons don't exist. Mm-hmm. That's fact. I'll defend that against anybody of any faith that I mentioned. There's not an apologist that can make the statement at all that demons are hoax or don't exist, because that would mean that the whole narrative, red letter narrative, was based on smoke and mirrors that was designed for psychological control. Mm-hmm. And so I believe that Paul wasn't taking any chances. Mm-hmm. He was working for the most powerful people on earth. And so he just picked the most prolific demon in the consciousness of his enemy and crowned him and put a nice white shimmering coat on him and used his own methodology, which seemed to be pretty effective because he was the most important antagonist in the Dead Sea Scrolls and the demon that was mentioned the most in the entire Bible. And he's only mentioned once in the New Testament, and guess who mentions him? Paul, when he's asking us the riddle of what harmony is there between these two, Christ and Belial. And then a few chapters later, he tells us that the adversary masquerades as an angel of light. And when you ask a Christian apologist who this angel of light might be, if it's not the person Paul just referred to, 2 chapters earlier, making the yin and yang connection there, those two extreme connect. Why wouldn't would the devil make that feat and then show up as a subordinate? Or would he show up as an angel of light that had some purpose and meaning in people's mind? Of course, he would show up as the Christ, right? And Paul's even baiting us to understand that, but we don't figure it out. And so he goes further and says, don't you know, he poses as the adversary poses as an angel of light.
Over 8,000 men have permanently broken free from the P word by watching one single video training that you can actually watch by clicking the link below.
So you say by his enemy's conscience, he was trying to wipe out the Dead Sea Scroll community, because obviously, as the book James, the brother of the Lord says, or James, the book, I forget the name of the great scholar. I've read that book many
Yes,
times.
James, the
Paul
brother of
was,
Jesus.
James, the brother of Jesus. He was the enemy of this community, like you said, this ancient community. So he went on psychic warfare and he won the day. That was his goal, right? You think he was trying to create a new religion, or he was just, again, going warfare on them?
He was redirecting a peloton of human belief manufacturing machines, our brains, that were already were split by the leveling of the were split by the crucifixion and the war that was happening between the Jews and the Romans. And he went to school specifically to learn how to build religions. And it looks like he was working for the Herodians as a counterintelligence operative the entire time that he was going to school. So from the very beginning, and this would not be a deviation from what was normal amongst the tax collectors, because right next door to the Herodians, you had the Pisos, who were putting their small children in camps with the teachers of righteousness. Josephus, under a different name, before he was adopted by the Flavians for the mission he was adopted for, was put into a camp with Bannus when he was like 7 years old, might have been younger. But he was put in under the instruction of a righteous teacher named Bannus that was a John the Baptist type character for over 3 years. And then he raised through the ranks of the Jewish resistance against Rome until he became a general over Galilee. And, there's a lot of weird parallels between Josephus and Paul. I don't know if you know that, but they both had a shipwreck on the way to Malta.
That's true.
And it was happened around the same time. And they both seem to have a spotty history. But when one shows up and is doing stuff, the other one's silent. And vice versa. And they don't
Josephus doesn't talk about Paul. Paul doesn't talk about Josephus.
Now, one of those is understandable, but the other one isn't. Right? So the same thing with John and Yohanan ben Zakkai. Those two characters seem to be the same person. So it looks like Vespasian and Titus hijacked the smartest scribes, including Seneca and a bunch of other people that were Greeks and that hadn't weighed in on either part of the war. And they manufactured both religions simultaneously with the destruction of the Second Temple, so that not only would they have a new hybrid religion that they could sell to the Gentiles, but the Jews that had been dispersed could reform under the horrific restructuring of the Jewish faith. And you know what I mean? I mean, the Goyim, and we're all going to be their slaves. I mean, that was manufactured. That was so that they could be a perpetual bad guy. And no one's picked up on that. And the Romans are still using it, beating that page from that playbook to death. And even when people are told, they go right back to doing what the TV tells them, picking a side and hating somebody. No. And that's what it was all designed to do.
Divide and conquer. Huh?
We really need to go after the largest organization on the planet that's still in control through fraud and terror. And part of it is this false narrative. And realizing that it was built on demonology is, and finding out that Judas was the crucified person from Daniel T. Unterbrink. And I've reached out to him. I'm hoping he reaches back out to me. Maybe after this show he will. I'd like to do one of these with him on there. It just seems ridiculous that people don't put together that what they did there with that actual Jewish rebel, the one that disappeared from the testimonium of Josephus Flavian and was replaced by Jesus the Christ in an interpolation that's been proven now. But the whole story is about the timeline of the birth, the childhood, the training and the execution of Judas the Galilean after the Second Temple. And magically Jesus shows up where we should see the crucifixion of Judas. But instead we see Judas turned into the treasurer, the one that handles the money, and he would never even handle money, wouldn't touch it. Neither would James. And they make sure that Jesus doesn't touch money anywhere in the New Testament either. But when money does become a problem, we find that a fish is caught to pay the temple tax by Peter, and Jesus again gets off without having to touch the money. And there's something to that, because touching money creates a a demonic parasitic thought form in the human consciousness. And that was what was taught by the fourth philosophy. So all these people out there that are like, I'm Jewish, I'm Hindu, I'm agnostic, I'm an atheist. You guys, if you're participating in the monetary system, whether you're voting or not, if you're submitting to taking two wives, letting somebody stand in for the decision-making process between you and the creator of souls, whether that be government or Christ or any other idol, Mary, any intercessor that you let get between that relationship that's always been there, that's never been severed, you're participating in the spiritual net of fornication, according to the fourth philosophy. And so, that's not really a bad teaching, right? It just means maintain your free will, stand up for yourself. And we haven't. And this is what happens when you fall into the nets of Belial. And it's not just money in government. I hate to say this because I lose a lot of people when I say it, but this is the truth about what they taught. They didn't eat animal products for a bunch of reasons, not just because they wanted the world to be a nicer place, but because they understood microbial blowback in a way that we don't today, that we're just now starting to understand today. I'll shut up.
No, this is great. Great thread and cadence. But so there's this world system, this dark virus that came out of the Bible and how it was co-opted, this demon energy, and it's created the monetary system, the health system, all these systems that are basically keeping humanity as chattel and slave, dormant. Who is the bad guy? Is it Philip K. Dick, the empire never ended? Because people say, well, dude, the Roman Empire fell. And let's face it, the Roman Catholic Church is not the same Roman Catholic Church it was even 50 years ago. It's a ghost of itself. I mean, Christianity, Judaism, and even Islam are sort of, they're not what they were. So who's the bad guy? Who are the bad hombres?
Well, the person that you're talking to through the little hole in the box now when you're confessing.
It's like she got eye lift surgery, but she just did this for 5 minutes before bed.
My friends keep asking if I got
is Google and Alexa and AI.
New confession.
So, I mean, they turned into the CIA. They turned into the KGB. And China's, I can't remember what theirs is called, but if there was an intelligence organization that existed that wasn't a metamorphosis of the Vatican, it wouldn't exist. They would have already wiped it off the map. So if it exists, that it's them posing under a tent that is not suspicious to the culture that it's operating under. But that's why the CIA has always been a problem in our country, because it really wasn't working for us, as we all know now. It's always been working for the same people that brought down Joachim and Boaz and the Solomon building in the first Tisha B'Av 2,600 years ago in 587 BC. It's no mistake that they brought down the Solomon building and the Twin Towers, and then 2,600 years later did it on 2001. It's their calling card. They're letting you know, like David Bowie said, they never lost control.
Beautifully. Love it that you're quoting Bowie. You had me at Bowie, at hello. So that makes sense. So for the audience, again, we already have a good crowd. A lot of people are coming in. If you have a question or a pushback for Nick, he wants to hear it, please put it in the chat. I know the chat was very busy trying to pronounce Belial. Some people have those peanut gallery drive-by. This is not true, but, well, what's your question? Why? But people won't write. But we will, of course, be very kind. Nick will take your questions. I have a pushback, Nick, and it's the same criticism that I have with Joe Atwell or James Valiant or, the Caesar created Christianity, is that it's hard. Taking away Paul, it's hard for me to see the four Gospels as anything that could have been created or co-created at the same time, because theologically they are very different. We know that the Gnostics were the first to embrace the Gospel of John in the 2nd century. We know they were scattered. So we know that, even the epistles and the pastorals are late. It's hard for me to accept, like Joe Atwell would say, that it was just one big New Testament shove to control the Jews and the Christians, when I see it as all these different varying spiritual texts that later on started to get collated by the early church, 2nd century or so. So tell me what's your argument against this? Or
So, I mean, like I was saying earlier, they were so ahead of the game as far as counterintelligence. They were putting their kids into play, right? And they were doing that back at the early part of the century. So,
first century.
The first gospel, if everybody wants to write this down, you're not going to remember it if you don't. It's Proto-Mark, Proto -Mark. That's how you find it. And Proto-Mark was the tax collectors putting their toe in the water, attempting to see what would happen if they released a document that made Judas into Iota Chi, which became Iota Chi, Jesus Christ, however you want to say that evolution happened. But in the Codex Sinaiticus, it's IX, it's Iota Chi. So what they did there is they tried to beta test the first tax collector friendly gospel, and it blew up. It backfired. Not immediately, because not everybody could read, right? So it took a while for it to reverberate into the communities that mattered. And it wasn't released to them. It was released to the other 10 districts of Rome that the Jamesians did burn down as in response. So it's no accident that the 4 districts of the 14 that weren't burned down were the Jamesian community, because they were the ones that burned down Rome. And Nero was like on the hot seat, like a cat on a hot tin roof, trying to figure out which mole do I have to whack to stop this? Because he couldn't stop the entire Jamesian community. So he had to stop the catalyst that was driving them to burn down Rome. And so he went after the Pisos. That tells me that the Pisos were likely. And then we see all the connections to a young Josephus and the Pisos.
But just quickly, a lot of people, who are the Pisos? Because most people know the Herodians, but the Pisos are more.
The Pisos purposefully blended into the infrastructure of royalty, because they were probably the catalyst that created the first gospel.
And who were they? A family or royal?
They were the most powerful tax collectors, probably more powerful than the Herodians, as far as their influence and staying power and how long they'd been in office, the stability of the family. I don't think that they were interbreeding like the Herods were to try to maintain control. They seemed to have a lot more political foundation than the Herodians did, and they acted like it, right? They had their crap together. And so
they were pagan, or
they were Gaul.
Okay, so
what would become French Freemasons.
Okay.
French Catholic Freemasons.
Right.
But so so the Piso dynasty is probably alive and strong today, but under a different name. But that name disappeared real fast, just like Josephus Flavian. Where did he go? Right? He got married. He had kids. He was probably a senior to Justin Martyr, because Martyr wasn't his last name, right? But they purposely hid these families and bled them into the controlling families that were there, married them in, and kind of helped them disappear. So you can't really track these people now, but for over 100, 200 years, the Pisos were a fixture as tax collectors. And Nero was convinced that 19 of them had conspired against him, is the official story. But I think that he wasn't worried about that. He was worried about the fact that he couldn't stop his city from burning down. And he felt like taking them out was going to please the people that were burning it down. And we're not allowed to hear that part of the story for a big reason, right? So what happened between 60 and 70 AD is extremely important. I mean, the real mark after the beta test was pulled back by Nero, because he said he got that off the market fast for all the reasons I'm talking about. But then the real mark after Proto-Mark came out only 5 to 10 years later. Likely after the Second Temple was fully leveled so that they wouldn't experience any blowback this time. It was probably done after they could catch their breath, the Caesars and Josephus and Johann ben Zakkai, and they could figure out how they were going to create a dual control system through the new Judaism and this Christian Gentile religion. But
I didn't have a whole lot of experience. And so really, to me, it was like a chore.
I had a lot of experience.
Here's what they don't tell you. Month after month, year after year, it just keeps getting better.
So basically, your answer is that they're rolling out these gospels, sort of evolving, if you would, because obviously some gospels are older and while they're singing the Beatles, the Taxman, right? I'm the
Right.
Taxman, yay!
And Mark had a cross on it, right? And that's not by accident. There probably wasn't a guy named Mark. They were probably referring to the sigil that was on the front of the book. And that was a mark that represented death. It meant the death of their movement. And many people think that 4 in numerology represents a step below man, the beast. And so people are wearing the mark of the beast and don't even know that that's what they've done. They've literally put that, and then they rub it on people's forehead on Ash Wednesday.
Right.
And it's disgusting. To once you know, you can't unknow a thing.
Yeah, for sure. Yes. Again, if you have any questions, I see Graham. Graham, I know you must have a question. Mike, Frank, you too. You're arguing about Mossad, which is great. But if you have any question for Nick, let us know. I think it's interesting because I was thinking today, Nick, it's interesting that if there's one of the religions in that area, well, obviously there's Jewish polemics that you find in the Talmud, but interesting how the Mandeans, the first Gnostics, did not like Jesus. They thought he was an usurper. He'd grab things. They thought there was the tradition of John the Baptist that was the real dope. So according to you, maybe the Mandeans had seen the truth, 2,000 years ago, because scholars are finding they are older than people thought, probably second, maybe even first century.
I'm shocked they still exist. They're the closest thing to the Pythagoreans that still exist. They're still telling the truth. It's one of the biggest frustrations I have with Gnosticism and the Essene, the modern Essene discovery is the plant that was put there. And they don't know it. They're still calling him Jesus. And there was never a person that was called anything of the sort. His name was Yehuda, and his brother was Yaakov, and it was Jude and Jacob, but Jacob became James, and so that's how far off we all are when we're praying to these names and stuff. So if you really want to get real with it, you got to go back and at least understand what they were called in real life, so that maybe they'll listen to you when you pray to them. But if you pray to Judas about money, you're not going to please him, because the problem is that these nets that are used to capture souls and harvest the luge are designed for the believer and the unbeliever alike. They do not care if you believe in Jesus Christ. People are like, that religion doesn't even count anymore, right? Well, how does it affect me? Look at the date. It's on the money. It literally told us that everything you put in your body is blessed. And blessed means sprayed in the blood of Christ. When you get down to what that means, it used to mean sprayed in a ram that had been properly blessed by the Levi sect of the Jews, but tribe of the Jews. But then when Christ came, he replaced all of those sacrifices, and it became his blood that we are washed in when we say the word blessed. So when we sneeze and somebody says bless you, I want to go take a shower, because they just threw that all over me, and they don't even realize what they're doing,
Oh, indeed. It's quite the simulation, but it's supposed to be that bad because that's how you play the game. If you're going to control society, you better do it long and do it hard. And everything you thought was true needs to be thrown out. But I want to bring in Vance. Vance, first of all, is it Belial or Belial?
I'd say Belial.
Belial. Okay, so
yeah, rhymes with Belial.
We don't know. But as long as we don't summon his ass, so that's fine.
We'd have to go with a time machine, go back 2,000 years and see how they said. They probably said or something like that.
Yeah, I think you're right, Vance. It was.
Yeah, we don't know. We weren't there. We don't know how they pronounce Sophia or
a lot of guttural stuff going on.
Well, Belhaya means Lord, I am. So Esher, Aya Esher means I am that I am. And if you break down the phonetics in Akkadian, which we don't have anymore, and maybe we don't have it, so we couldn't figure out the root of what that word actually meant. But Belial or Belial is spelled like 6 different ways, but sounds the same in each of the spellings. And it sounds just like Akkadian for Lord I am, the one who states that I am, which would fit because that character doesn't show up until late in the human development.
Well, now here's one thing I have to say. You're talking about money and government and so forth, as if the Romans invented that type of thing. Money and government have existed since the dawn of civilization. People had tokens to represent their work and traded them and so forth from, a long time before the Romans. So can we really say that that's evidence for the Romans, instituting some sort of demonically controlled system?
If it goes back to Babylon, right?
Yeah, right.
Robert Anton Wilson say the Babylon Con.
My understanding is
Samaria.
The Jewish temple was Solomon's temple, and the teachings that were coming out of it were opposed to the monetary system. And these people probably did not. They probably were more in line with Pythagoras than we can understand, and their diet was probably a lot stricter than we're told today. But when it was leveled, what replaced it was a meat market and a kosher system that replaced their dietary wisdom. And then the meat market became a place for the exchange of money in a new fashion that I don't think had existed up until that point. If you go a step further back to Egypt, you find out that they weren't using money to build the pyramids. The private labor that they were bringing in were being paid with beer and barley.
My kind of money, my kind of payment and salary, right?
But you're not going to have anything pulled out from under you through double and triple taxation at the grocery store that way. The game, the equity, the lazy river of equity theft that we've been tricked into with fiat money. Has no effect in a bartering system that doesn't use money. And that is what is at the core of the fourth philosophy. And that scares the shit out of people that love money. Because the idea that we'd be better off without it levels the playing field in a way that you start to really realize what kind of person you are when someone discusses the reality of taking it away. Some people that wouldn't matter, they'd be happier. And they would, and some people like that would be the end of the world for them. They would feel worthless, kind of like when people say that they lose the Jesus they asked from outside into their heart. No. Can't imagine being without him now because I'd be worthless. And what is Belial known as? The Lord of Worthlessness. Right? And other comparisons are the Lord of Hosts. He's lording over hosts. That's what a parasite does. A successful parasite.
It's 2025. AI can build a pro-level website within a couple of minutes. Meanwhile, you're still asking it how to write emails. Seriously, you've got one of the most powerful tools ever invented sitting right in front of you, and you're barely scratching the surface. Tomorrow.
Well, I had another question too, which is, what do you think about the Gnostics in the time, which kind of took another whole tack, and we're talking about words and Jesus, but supposing we think of Jesus as just a name, and the Romans, it's clear to me the Romans, grabbed whatever religion that the Jews, had invented back in the, in the first couple of centuries AD, and played around with it, and took it over, the Holy Roman Empire and all that. But meanwhile, we had a parallel Gnosticism that wasn't, didn't say that, the blood of Christ and the sacrifice and all this other stuff. So what's your, how does Gnosticism fit into all this?
Well, Gnosticism probably did the smartest thing that it could do. I mean, they acted like the Jedi and they hid in the structure of what was happening, and they continued to play significant roles. But they did a very David Bowie thing again. They figured out how to put English on the ball to get it past the goalie, and so John the Apostle was definitely on board with the Most High in this realm was the demiurge. And that was the one that got jealous when you didn't bend a knee and stuff like that. And he tried to tell us as much in his Apocrypha, but I don't think that even many of the church fathers figured out how dangerous that was until they decided to take it out. After the King James Version was released, the 14 books of the Apocrypha came right out. And because there was how can you sit there and say that he's the lion? The beast, he's the lion, he's the creator of this world. He's soul disconnected. He's a bastard. How can you call him out for all those things? And then the same John, under the watchful eye of Domitian Flavian, tells us that Jesus is the lion. He told us that in the book of Revelation. One of the last things he was
Lion
asked
of Judah
was the last thing that and that's hidden in Genesis. The reference to that, these are like backlinks in social media. You go back to Genesis, and they're talking about the lion's whelp, right? This is the father of the Jews, is who he's referring to, and he's basically telling us that this is the demiurge. And when John went too far, Yohanan ben Zakkai, John, when he went too far, he was publicly dipped in boiling oil in the Colosseum, according to Tertullian. So we know that John was pushing the edges of his hall pass with Domitian Flavian, a hall pass that he had established with Domitian's father, Vespasian, and continued with Titus as they built Christianity together. But Domitian got in there and didn't want any legacy of his father or brother to continue at all. He was ready to destroy the entire Christian movement just to destroy their legacy. But it was already moving, and the bishops pretty much told Domitian, they kept him a little bit at bay, and he didn't last very long. And after he was gone, the thing started getting cooking again. But the only real persecution that happened to Christians, the ones that the Flavians were inventing with the Gentiles and Paul and all that, the only real persecution they ever faced was when Domitian was in office, because he was an enemy of what his father and his brother had done. I don't know if that answered your question, Vance, or if I definitely didn't want to avoid anything.
I know it gets complicated, because I don't know Roman history very well with all these dignitaries back then and there. But and a follow-on to that, what's your opinion of the Gospel of Thomas, which is, according to Gnostics, the sayings of Jesus? And I don't see anything Belial like in there, but maybe I'm just blind.
No, I don't think that Thomas even made it into the Apocrypha, did it? I think they cut that out in the Council of Nicaea. I can't remember.
It's not in the Bible, no, but
it never made it into the Bible?
No.
Okay.
The Gospel of Thomas, no.
I almost took a class on that at East Tennessee State University when I was taking philosophy there, because they had a guy that was teaching it. I can't remember his name, but he was a phenomenon. Everybody that came out of that class talked about it. But I don't know enough about that book other than to say that I've never read anything in that book that was an inversion of the fourth philosophy teachings. Everything that I've heard from that book, and I've read the whole thing, actually. I have read it. And it's surprisingly well connected to the original teachings of the crucified person and his brother James. And the fact that it tells us that James was the one for which heaven and earth was created, meaning that, like, if anybody beat the game, it was James. Like, he was the one that showed everybody how it was supposed to be done. And that's the crucified person talking. So that's that confused me, because how could that be? When I first figured out that Christ never existed, there was a big hole where a savior used to be. And I was trying to figure out how to plug that hole. And so I'm picking through these people, like, who's the savior? Who's the savior? Who's the real savior? And it obviously can't be Judas. He just seems like he's a really strong military reactive person. And he doesn't really say anything profound that anybody recorded very much. But James, on the other hand, right? And then when Eisenman started talking about James and what he found out, then it got really confusing, because James never claimed to be anybody's savior. And so if I hadn't discovered the book by Dr. Michael Newton about the soul and how we're all the same, that there's no there's no one of us that's going to come save the rest of us kind of thing, that we save ourselves. It's all free will. And you're supposed to learn this before
Well,
you
the
go.
idea of a savior itself is right away creates, a hell and a devil and all this other stuff that you have to be saved from, right?
Right.
So I've always thought of, at least in my older years, of the Jesus figure, the crucified one, as you call him. Maybe that's what you're referring to as a teacher who realized, some deep realities and tried to communicate them, and not that he was the only one or the son of God or anything else like that. It was a very, very wise, a very wise teacher that was trying to propagate the teaching.
I used to think that being tired all the time, having a slower metabolism, and struggling with my weight was just my new normal. It's what happens, right? But then, something my sister told me completely changed my perspective on everything. She mentioned it to me in passing, but I'm so glad she did. I remember feeling so defeated. I'd wake up exhausted and reach for coffee, but it never really helped. I was tired of feeling bloated, and my clothes just didn't fit right anymore. I'd look in the mirror and not even recognize the person looking back. It got so bad, I started avoiding family photos and social events. I had zero energy to do anything after work, so I'd miss out on so many things with my friends and family. It felt like I was just watching my life from the sidelines, and I was so over it. My sister told me about a simple change she made to her evening routine. It was so easy, it almost seemed too good to be true. I figured, what did I have to lose? So I tried it. And honestly, it wasn't an overnight change, but after a few weeks, I started to notice small differences. I was waking up feeling genuinely rested, not groggy. My afternoon energy slump disappeared. My mind felt clearer, and I was excited to get up and be active again. The biggest surprise was seeing the numbers on the scale finally start to move down. My clothes started fitting better, and that feeling of being stuck was finally,
throughout the ages.
Yes, the sons of light. Anybody who wants to figure out where all this comes from, if you go research the sons of light, they were the precursor to the fourth philosophy. So this movement didn't really ever have a name when it was in the desert in exile for 400 years after the first temple leveling, 600 years after the first temple leveling. It just was, they were just the Essenes. They were the sons of light, the cream of the crop that could read good and understood the higher and lower meaning of Pesher. Those were the ones that were the scrolls were entrusted to, and that were doing the writing of them. And the person that they were emulating was Pythagoras, and that's what the church is hiding. And so if we really want to get to the Tootsie Roll center of what's going on here, all you got to do is research Pythagoras, and then you're like, why is this big blackout here? And what are all these stories about him not wanting to touch beans? And those are the stories we're left with. I mean, they turned him into a cartoon character of who he was. And the truth is, he was so important that they burned him and everybody that followed him alive in their own houses when they would meet, until they got rid of all of them. And then they blacked out the information for 150 years. So something he was saying was profoundly important. And when I dug into it through a researcher named Bob Young in Australia, the Pythagorean Society awarded him as, I think, the foremost living expert on Pythagoras. And I got an interview with him on my YouTube channel. And Bob, even though he eats pork, told me that Pythagoras was a vegan, 100%, and that he was the teacher of righteousness in the Dead Sea Scrolls. And he was anti-money, and he was anti-government. And he said that we are souls.
I like him.
And so when you start breaking all this down, these are all the things the church will just jumps to censor. And so the fact that they're working so hard to censor that, and he was so important, it almost becomes all the evidence you need that there's something valuable being hidden there that needs to be outed ASAP. Like 20 years ago, this should have come out, and it's being suppressed by algorithms. But right now, the thing that would save humanity isn't who we're going to vote for next. It's putting it all down. Not picking up a ballot, not picking up another dollar. And that people they're horrified by that idea, because they look out on their golf course in their side yard and they don't see fruit in it. And that was the church that did that, because it used to be orchards of fruit. And they came and they wiped out everything and replaced what we think is beautiful and aesthetically good for us. And now we have no permagardens, so we have to farm everything. And that's really when the simulation began, is when we started farming and fencing, and we tried to tell nature that we could do it better, and everything started to F up. And, The only way to reverse out of this is the people are going to hate me. You have to stop eating flesh. You have to stop using money, and you have to stop submitting to government in every single way, including voting, and send them a message that it's over.
We're all going to wind up on the street or worse, because without money, you can't pay your property taxes or your rent or blah, blah, blah. So if everybody did that, it would be chaos. How is that practical?
In cities, yes, absolutely. And that's why they did that, because they're trying to make us completely dependent on a cancerous tumor enterprise.
Well, even in the suburbs, I mean, here I am, on half-acre plots or whatever, but they'd throw me out of my own house. It is true that, civilization has yoked us all, with the monetary system and so forth, and especially compound interest, the lenders, the money lenders and so forth. That's really bad.
And I want to get into that. Regardless of how we fix it, we have to understand what happened. We can't say that, well, it's not good that we even know this because it's too late. That's not, I don't think that's going to ever really get us out of this. We have to at least know how horrific things are if we're going to, as a hive mind, because that's the way it's becoming, start to change. Like a peloton of birds, a certain group of them turns and then they all turn. We have to get to that number of birds that gets us all turning in the right direction. But something I want to get to before everybody gets worn out here, for those of you that say that Jesus Christ wasn't the foundation of the monetary system and capitalism, just go to the parable of the talents in Matthew 25. I believe it's verse 26 and 27 specifically, that cannot be argued with. But the entire parable of talents is about giving money to three servants. A master does, and then he goes out of town. When he comes back, he wonders who played Monopoly better than the others.
Investments.
Who invested and got return on investment better than the others. And the one who didn't touch the money, who immediately buried the money and then waited for master to get back and then gave Caesar what was Caesar's. The guy who actually followed both the fake Messiah's advice and the real crucified person's advice was punished. He was punished for not being a capitalist. And so for anybody who says that Christ was not pro-capitalism, please go to the parable of the talents and realize that those are not just weights and measures. That's money, right? And talent never meant talent as we know it today. That's always been a derogatory term for someone that has good skills. And it's used as a proponent of the monetization of human consciousness, so that people start to equate their skill set with talent, or with money. So that everything's monetized in the mind, right? And you don't show somebody your skill set unless you're going to get some talents or some money back, right? So somebody having talent, I don't think I'm ever going to use that word again, but in those last two parts of the parable of the talents, it's clear that he's talking about money, and there's no mistranslation there. Money and interest, right? And then there's also the render unto Caesar, which is Caesar's, which is why the Federal Reserve doesn't let us have our own money. It's actually debt, an instrument of debt always.
Right.
That's a fact.
Okay, I gotta show you this. It looks like a regular laptop stand, right? But wait for it, this thing is...
Yeah.
No, he said that.
That's a fact. Yeah, that's a fact. Yeah.
And then Peter catches a fish, which is us, to pay the tax for him, right? And Jesus never even touches the money because he would not do that. Neither would Judas or James. And then in John 6, they give us the basis for fiat central banking, where Jesus feeds the 5,000. A story that was originally about Zadok and Judas, I believe, or Zadok and James. Zadok was John the Baptist. They went out to the desert, and only the wealthier stratus of people had brought rations. And so Judas was just like, hey guys, share. And they did, and everybody ate, right? Well, that story was hijacked by the people that invented our banking systems to create a magic David Blaine experience where not only was the bread magically multiplying and reappearing out of one centralized provider, magically, like fiat value, right? So that no one else could have made this happen but their one guy. But then they added fish to the story, and they busted the fish up into pieces and handed that out as bread. That came in the 2nd century, them adding fish to the story. And that has a double meaning. Not only were they putting meat in a vegan story, but they were pitching us a cannibalistic mentality, because we're the fish. And in every single instance that the fish is mentioned in the New Testament, it's about beating it up for money and luge, and then frying it at the shoreline and eating it. There's never a story where the fish is saved or rewarded for anything that it does. It's always about capturing them in the nets. And then the nets in the New Testament are mentioned 3 times, including when God puts the large net in the lake and pulls all of the fish out and determines which ones are the good ones and the bad ones he throws away. And then, of course, Jesus having them throw the nets over the right side of the boat. Can't remember what the 3rd one is right now, but these are always references to Belial, and the reference to the fish is always luge harvesting. And there's never a direct request in the New Testament for people to be the fish, right? You'll never find anywhere in the New Testament where it asks you to be the fish. But for some reason, everybody's takeaway is, I'm a fish. And when you look at how they indirectly did that, that's black magic.
For sure. Yeah. And for the audience, talking about the Gospel of Thomas and James, it's 12. The disciples said to Jesus, we know that you will depart from us. Who is it who will be great over us? Jesus said to them, wherever you have come, you will go to James the just, for whose sake heaven and earth came to being. And most scholars just say, well, he was just an authority figure in those days. But that's a big title. If heaven and earth came because of your being, you're kind of a greater God or something.
Yeah. He said who was greater. And so the way that Paul plays it down when he has him executed in 62 CE, if you ask Christians, what was James's significance when he was stoned to death? They're like, he was the leader of the Jerusalem sect. That was the whole deal. He was the leader of the entire church. He was the brother of the crucified person. And somehow that got played down by a guy who wanted to turn the movement to Gentiles and raise money for it. And the anti-money portion of the group that he was killing off, he called them the poor, to make the survivors think that they wanted money. They just didn't know how to get it like I do.
And later they became the Ebionites. Yeah, for those little housekeeping, for those if you want to know more about the Gospel of Thomas and other Gnostic things, keep in mind that the virtual Alexandria Academy is permanently a very cheap price of $99 for more than 30 hours of Gnostic studies, ancient and modern, replay of all Astronosis conferences and all that. So little housekeeping, you can find it on the show notes. Get it now. It's become really popular. What's coming in the future beyond Nicholas's great research? We've got this month. We got, Jason Reza Georgiani will come back with some very new research. Richard Stanley, who will be talking about the Cathars. He's out making a movie. And when he gets back, we will talk about the Cathars. David Block. Many guests that you won't find anywhere else. We got shows on tattoo magic, the goddess Hathor, Jung, of course. We got to once a month. We're going to do Jung or David or Philip K. Dick or some other Gnostic saint. So great show. So please support A.M. Biden any way you can. Give us a super chat if you like what we're doing. Like, subscribe, join the Patreon. We're doing some exclusive stream shows there, like we'll do. Kevin Can will join us to give us a show on how to exorcise the archons and the Wetiko and the mind parasites from your brain, coming for Patreon's exclusive and early. So just thought I'd do that here right now. Any question from the audience? I don't see anything, Vince.
No, we got.
Okay.
I'll shut up. I'm sorry.
No.
You're making
That's
sense.
what you're here for, right?
I'm here for them. Let's do it.
Okay. We'll take Graham's question first. Caesar's last wife, Calpurnia, I should show it, was a Piso. Shouldn't the name of the original dynasty of the Roman Empire actually be called the Julio Piso rather than the Julio Claudian?
especially side sleepers. So I almost made the dumbest mistake of my life. I got this contour pillow called derelict.
I don't know the answer to that question, but if I was a betting man, I would say that there's the disappearing act that I was talking about. There's a reason why Josephus Flavian doesn't have his original family name. He was a counterintelligence agent. That entire family needed to disappear so that the origin of the first gospel that was beta tested on the human species was also disappeared with it. And that's why we don't know how Rome burned down, for the same reason that the Pisos magically disappeared after hundreds of years in that position.
Okay. Well, I did a no-no, which is I lost my handle onto Graham's question, so I can't get it off the screen. Must be the demiurge at work here. Graham, where are you? How do I get rid of it? Do you see it, Miguel?
What was I going to say? Yeah, you just replace it. So we have here Christina Marie
there
asking, well, now you got it. Now you took it down. Okay.
There we go.
Question regarding Mary's name. I couldn't find a source that the Romans used the name Mary as an insult for Hebrew women mentioned in part 1 and meant rebellious. Can you clarify this notion?
No, that work is the person that you won't hear me mention much is Joseph Atwill, even though that was one of the first books I ever read on the subject. And I got that from his research. But I'd also studied the etymology of the word mar because of maritime law. And Mary seems to be like an angry ocean. When he expressed the people that invented maritime law used this as a diminutive term to help them get over the fact that they were asked to slaughter tens of thousands, 100,000. There were 700,000 people that were slaughtered at once in 70 AD, maybe 1 million. And many of them were women, right? And they were so starved out during the siege that one of a story was passed around to help dehumanize the Jews in the minds of the Roman soldiers. And this is a true story. This part is true. There's a lot of evidence for it that a lady named Mary, a Jewish woman who was a rebel, ate her own child. And she gave half of it to the Romans when they came to the door to execute her. She offered the other half of the half-eaten child as an offering to them so that they wouldn't kill her. And I don't remember how that ends, but it was supposed to gross people out and make them think that these people are subhuman, right? Just like all the other propaganda that was invented by Caesars after they were wiped out. Mm-hmm. So it's just a joke that people think that the organization that's in control of the world wiped out their own temple twice. Yeah, they wouldn't have let that happen if the Jews were in control.
Right. That is true.
Okay, we got another one. This is a little bit tangential, I think, to your subject, but I can't even read this. And then I got to get off YouTube.
Yeah. I need to get off YouTube. Yeah.
I need to get off YouTube. I couldn't even parse it. I must be getting tired. Please speak on what is known about the Solomonta school of magic, supposedly in Romania. It seems to me that Solomon may be the same beast as the demiurge or Yahweh. Or am I mistaken? Thanks again.
Definitely new to me.
I don't know that there's enough evidence to say with any great certainty that Solomon ever existed, but I don't really go into that in my book. In the book Christ Is Belial, I know a lot more about what happened outside of that, but I'm trying to isolate something here that's a perfect, simple theory. The Dead Sea Scrolls guy who was fishing for men with nets that were made to look righteousness that aren't righteous is the fisher of men who fishes for men with bad dietary wisdom from Mark chapter 7. who supports the monetary system, who tells us that landowners can pay everyone the same regardless of how long that they've worked, in the parable of the workers. He basically, the reason that everything trickles down and wages change last when the board is shifted is because this whole system was set up to F the worker from the beginning. And Jesus was the one that gave us the red letter parables that back it all up. That's the infrastructure for this dehumanizing way of dealing with each other, the monetization of human consciousness.
I think that's been going on way longer than the Romans, though.
These 100% grass-fed beef sticks from Paleo Valley are 30 sticks for just $36 right now. But before you go and buy them, here are 5 reasons I replaced processed snacks with these. Number 1, the ingredients. There's 100% grass-fed beef from American Family Farms and organic spices, which makes these sticks incredibly flavorful while keeping things clean. Number 2, they're naturally fermented, which creates a great flavor, but without the preservatives like encapsulated lactic or citric acid found in all the other meat sticks. Number 3, they're perfect for when you're trying to cut back on processed carb-heavy snacks, but still want something satisfying and delicious. Number 4, they're super convenient. I keep them in my bag, the pantry, my desk drawer, and I send them off to school with my kiddo. They're a great protein-rich snack that won't hinder my health goals. And number 5, they're from Paleo Valley, which means everything is well-sourced, 100% grass-fed, grain-free, gluten-free, soy-free.
Ever since anybody got control of money and levied taxes and borrowed and, lending and borrowing, that's before the Romans. So
sure, I think it's Chaldean as far back as I go, because I'm trying to stay relevant. And a lot of these things don't require belief. My book does not require belief at all, any more than it requires that Paul believed in demons. Paul didn't need to believe in demons. Paul was a genius, like Rome, if he existed. Rome takes other people's movements that were ingenious, and then they invert them with a little satanic rudder, and people don't even see the rudder. They just see where the ship goes. And so
we call it spin these days.
Yeah. And so he took somebody else's movement and spun it.
Now here's a really, really good question for you. So how is Christ Belial?
I saw that, and I was actually trying to just answer that. But literally,
that's the whole subject. That's your whole paper, right?
He's late to the game. It happens.
Yeah. I want people to buy the book, right? Because I want them to ask me questions, because I've already spelled all this out. But I'll be really simple for you. In the Damascus document, they outline what these nets are, how he uses them, and then you go back and you read the New Testament and you find out if his teachings are in coordination with the nets of Belial or not. And they are 100% in coordination with the nets of Belial. If a Christian apologist really wanted to go against me, what they would have to do is break down the definition of each net and then tell me that's not what Christ was preaching. But that's a tall order, because that's exactly what he was teaching. There's no part in the scripture where he tells us anything other than everything you put in your body is blessed. And that is chronic pollution of the temple. It doesn't, and then of course the money thing, no one questions that. I mean, I've already proven that Christ was pro-capitalism, pro-labor, anti-labor, and
Well, how do we know though that the Romans didn't stick those things in after the fact to make it look like Christ was monetary?
They did. None of this requires. What I'm talking about is actually in effect right now. The final draft that's still being used on the human mind and in our monetary system it doesn't require that this actually happened or didn't happen in real life. Because this is
real quick. Here's the book. I'll have it on the show notes. Everybody, you can get it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, and everything else. And Nick lays it all out. But please continue. I just wanted to show the audience.
So meat, money, and mind control. If you're eating meat, if you're participating in money, if you're submitting to anything other than the creator of souls in any way, then you're taking 2 wives. You're splitting your allegiance from the creator of souls to something else that gets jealous when you don't bend a knee. The creator of souls doesn't. The creator of souls doesn't want you to pray over a carcass before you eat it. Right? That's someone else that wanted blood and carcasses, and then for you to pray over them before you eat.
Well, that's in the Old Testament, the heave offerings and the wave offerings and all that stuff. This is way before Jesus or Rome or anything else like this. Is like the Jews, basically.
But Jesus didn't deny that the God of the Old Testament was his father. The Jesus that we're left with in the final edit, right? But I don't think that was who was crucified. What I don't want people to forget in the Christ is Belial thesis is that the whole thing was invented to create a duality over here between a Christ and an Antichrist when it was Judas. And once you realize it was Judas, you go back and you read the New Testament and you're horrified. Because look what they did with that guy. I mean, this is a satanic outfit. This is a satanic enterprise. And this is who is controlling the value of our money. And so it's no wonder that we're in this situation. It's because we didn't stop them. And we let them get to this point. And now, like old Ben Kenobi, they don't care if we strike them down. They'll become more powerful than we ever imagined, just like when Rome was brought down by the Visigoths. That didn't bring Rome down. They spread out like a mushroom spore and popped up in steeples everywhere and blamed the Jews for every bad thing they ever did along the way. And they're still getting away with that method of operation today.
Well, how do you explain when supposedly the Satan took Jesus into the desert and offered him all this real estate? I mean, was that just a play act to convince everybody that Jesus was not Satan?
Yeah,
or Belial?
That never happened in any of the Dead Sea Scrolls stories. There was something manipulative going on there. I'm not sure what it is, but my guess is it had something to do with tying him to Moses, maybe fulfilling some Old Testament prophecy about being tested for 40 in the desert. Obviously, they couldn't do it for 40 years, right? But what's interesting is
Moses, the same thing, right? Supposedly, Moses got shown all the promised land and all that. It was
This viral showerhead boosts water pressure and cuts your water bill by 30%. This dermatologist from New York just discovered how to transform your skin and hair with a simple showerhead. And big water filter companies are furious. She created a device that purifies your shower water, making your skin softer and your hair shinier in just a few showers. Plus, it cuts your water bill by 30%. At this rate, everyone in America will have one of these by 2025. Dr. Emily Hart, a well-known dermatologist and mother of 2, noticed something strange one morning. Even though she showered every day, she still felt dirty. Her skin was dry, her hair looked dull, and her shower was always moldy. However, a vacation in Switzerland brought a surprising change. In just 1 week, her skin started looking fantastic again, and her hair got shiny. When she got back to New York, Dr. Hart figured out that the big difference was the water. Switzerland is known for having the cleanest tap water, while the US struggles with tap water pollution.
direct parallel to that, the story
Right.
in the Old Testament.
Exactly. So what I really want people to take away from all this is that my book was built for people that don't believe anything anymore, as much as it was built for people that still do. And it doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter if you're Hindu or one of the Abrahamic three, especially if you're in the Abrahamic three. This book was built to break the spell for everyone across the board, including the Gnostic, who is the most together of the groups that I've mentioned. They have the closest thing to what's right, but even some of them accidentally use the reference Jesus all the time, not realizing that they're participating in this operation, whether they're meaning to or not. They're promoting it. And people that don't know any better are hearing validation and endorsement when they hear you use that. We should all be using Judas. We should all be talking about the fourth philosophy, the last thing they want us to think about. They took the fourth philosophy and turned it into this, and turned it into a death symbol.
Hey, if Christ is Belial, who's Muhammad?
Muhammad was invented along with a nun, there was a real nun named Khadijah in 670, I believe. And she was in her 40s, and they married her to a half British royal, half Persian royal, that was a convergence of two powerful families to start this ballad. And they were much better at it this time than they were when they interpolated all the stories of Jesus after the fact. This time they were able to run their psychological operation in real time with a very real couple. And Muhammad was 20 years younger than Khadijah. But Khadijah had a lot of power, and she acted as an extreme source of stability for the papacy in this operation. But the same people that were allowed to get away with the manufacturing of the Second Temple Judaism and the post-Second Temple Judaism and the invention of Christianity through Yohanan ben Zakkai, aka John, acting as a dual agent to create both, they got cocky and created the Muslim faith as well. They probably thought they could take over the world with just that dualistic approach in the beginning, and then they realized they had a little bit of a problem with the like Mandaean types who had taken off in that direction and started doing something different. So they knew they had a little bit of a problem. They had to whack that mole and create a third mouse to chase. To work us against each other, and that controlled the children of Ishmael. So the first religion was invented to control the children of Isaac, and this one was to control the children of Ishmael. And so that they completely had the Abrahamic cultures under those three formats afterwards. And then it was used as a psychological operation, like a bad guy, just like the Jews had been used. So then they figured out how to interchangeably use these two as villains against the Christendom, to rub us for luge all over the place and continue to gain power through owning every side of this mind fuck, excuse my language. But and each one of them, regardless of if they take interest or don't take interest, it's the same bank. It's exactly the same bank that started after the first temple, with channels of blood running out of it in exchange for blessing animals that were about to be slaughtered for money. And then it became the church, it became the Jesus Christ banking system. So he was pro money, he was pro meat eating, and he was pro taking two wives, letting somebody else come in between you and your original connection with the creator of souls, that knocks on the door from the side yard and wants you to open up and let it come in. And these are the rules of engagement for demonology, not souls. So we can be certain that he was a demon for many, many reasons that I will not find a Christian apologist to stand up to in the light of day. And I think if we find that person, we're going to see a miniature exorcism. And I think they know it.
Yeah, I want to get to the solutions. Obviously, your solutions. Yeah, I disagree with Mike Frank about anarchism. I think anarchism is the solution. He was talking about if you have anarchism, you have gangs controlling things. We already have gangs controlling our cities, our government, slaughtering men in the Ukraine. I mean, yeah, gangs are already running this world.
We're supposed to be running around in orchards barefoot. We're supposed to be loving this place, right?
There'd be a hell of a lot less of us if that was the case.
State.
There's no way that the planet can sustain billions of people with that system. There's just no way.
Actually, that's the only system that it could.
Hey, my doctor recommended I get this book, and now I know why. Look at this blood sugar page. It got
more than support what we've got right now.
Disease would wipe out. There'd be no medicine. There'd be no hospitals. There'd be no hierarchies. Everybody just be plowing around on their fields, and they die when they died, and at 20 or 30 years old, and that would be the end of it. There'd be far fewer people. That's possible.
According to Josephus, they were living in camps of up to 5,000, and on average, they were living to be over 100 years of age when the average Roman wasn't making it to 50. So the evidence that we have from the first century historian that's most respected is that their diet doubled their lifespan against people that lived in the city of Rome and ate what Romans ate. So how has that been hidden?
Well, that's a small scale, though. We're talking about billions of people on this planet. You can't just pull the system out. You can't pull the rug out from it.
I can't.
Of course you can. It would have to be gradual. Yeah, I mean, it's like shining a light on somebody who's been in Plato's cave.
You'd have to reduce the population severely in order to go back to an agrarian. Sure, you can't do billions.
Well, I mean, we could ask AI how much land is available. But if you broke it down into 5,000 person camps,
most of the world is agrarian.
How much land is there? But I mean, I think you'd be shocked at how much land would be available to each 5,000.
But there's bad weather and famines and wipe people out.
Russia, China, and India is agrarian already.
But the largest.
No, but they have civilization. They have distribution networks. They have.
Who says
power.
We're getting rid of civilization?
Because the civilization's built on all the stuff you guys want to get rid of.
Yeah, we want to get rid of the simulation because we want
exactly.
to get back to nature and naturopathy
that's
and get away
another
from
argument.
hospitals and medicine.
Okay, get away from medicine. All right, get away from shelter. Right,
The medicine that hurts
tents.
people.
We're going to live in tents now.
No, just the medicine that's made from petroleum, right? Rockefeller medicine.
Nobody's saying you want to get rid of technology or civilization or science. That's not part of the argument. That's a straw man. Yeah,
I think technology could stop a lot of us from having to work, but money is something that isn't necessary. Just like taxes aren't necessary. If the government wanted to print more money to pay for the things it needs to pay for without making everybody feel.
But Nicholas, are you against crypto? What's your take on crypto?
I am 100%. I hate casting spells like this because I don't want to harm my own ability to make money for my family. My book is only $9, the price of a cheap lunch, and it gives you so much more. But crypto is money. It's a false sense of security. There is no security with crypto. It's built to be turned off, something they've never been able to do before. And so it's their next trick. It's their next net, pulling people into, and there's going to be a lot of people that make a lot of money in the beginning, right? But in the end game, it's always going to be the same. We're going to be in a lazy river of equity theft, and we're going to wonder what happened. And it's been going on forever and under a different flag each time. But the church doesn't really care what flag is flying over any of us. It's happy to burn it down because that's their motif is the double-headed phoenix rising from the ashes. And who are the double heads? Well, all you have to do is look up any of the demonological Goetias and you'll find out that Belial is the one that shows up as the two angels each time. And because he's trying to lend credibility to himself by showing up as more than one and providing contrast. And that's why Paul asks us what harmony is there between Christ and Belial, is because he had an extremely profound knowledge of how this demon worked and why he was important. There's no other demon mentioned as often as Belial is in all of Scripture, 27 times in the Bible alone, without even getting into the Dead Sea Scrolls. And the only time he's mentioned in the New Testament is by Paul, the inventor of Christ. And it isn't by accident. So once you know that a demon is running the entire ecclesiastical matrix, even if you don't believe in demons, that they built it on one so that it would have success, then you start to understand what's really the problem here. And why people react so violently when you try to free them from this intellectual trap is because when you watch how people react when you try to free them from this, that's why people believe in demons, because of their reaction. Each time it's the perfect example of what a soul looks like when it's been hijacked by an outside entity. I just want to get that on film.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I guess I'm still a proponent of crypto. I guess I'm not perfect. I still have hope. Maybe it's foolish hope, fool's gold.
I mean, what does crypto mean? Isn't that...
Give yourself 28 days and become the most dangerous person in the room.
It's 2025. AI can build a pro-level website within a couple of minutes. Meanwhile, you're still asking it how to write emails. Seriously.
Well, decentralized. That's what the whole point. We are talking about decentralization, where tyranny can only happen when centralization, which is our government. And I agree we have to break away from the swamp. You can't drain it. It has to be burned. We have to change our ways of diet, how we deal with money. We have to disengage. We can't fight. We can't defeat it. There's no chance.
The problem is that the currency isn't tied to the value that the civilization is producing anymore. That's what the gold standard was trying to do, right? It's trying to say, well, with all the value that we produce as civilization, we make tokens, and if the value increases, we give more tokens. If the value decreases, we'd have to decrease more tokens. But they disconnected that. Now they could just crank the money out, and that's where a lot of inflation. That's where inflation comes from, and inflation is robbery. Yes, compound interest is robbery. I'm with you about the way that money is used, but you're not against bartering, right? I mean, in the 5,000 person tent cities, they'd barter, wouldn't they?
Yes, and I wish somebody would argue with me from not you guys, but like somebody from outside would come on and be like, bartering doesn't work because of this, this, and this. And what I'm going to say to each one of the things that they try to say why bartering doesn't work, it's for a reason. It's called natural law. Because if everything stayed perfect forever, people would leverage it against other people. So there's a thing called decay that happens in our food. And so we're supposed to eat it fresh. It's not supposed to be shipped across the country. It's not supposed to be shipped to the next state. It's not even supposed to go to the next camp unless they're suffering some type of depravity and need to trade with you. Every camp should be self-sustainable, and it should be going straight from the vine to the dinner plate. That's where we get our best antioxidants and blah, 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 without getting into all that.
Then the camps go to war, though. That's the problem, because one camp is stealing water, too much water from the river and from the one downstream, and they start going to war and they get their weapons and they kill each other, and that's then we get it's like the Native Americans, used to live this way, right? And exactly this way, except they were meat eaters, but and they fought with each other because over territories and so forth.
There's a fairly good argument when you investigate the Hopi that they were agrarian vegans and that the white man showed up and gave them the tools that made the buffalo huntable in a way that it hadn't been before. And that the buffalo was they ate meat as often as a gorilla does, probably for a reason, which is not much. And they followed the seasons. And they didn't even grow in farms like we do. They knew where the orchards were, and they followed the permagardens and the seasons, and they stayed in basically the same area. And then when the white man showed up and gave them horses and guns and liquor, they started following the buffalo until they'd wiped them all out. Well, we wiped them all out, but they've started following the buffalo because not only did the buffalo mean meat, which is a denser form of feeding, for their families, but they grew a taste for it, right? And they knew they could trade it for liquor and horses and guns. And then once they had guns, that's when they started warring with each other in a way that they hadn't before. And so it only took white man showing up with guns, horses, and liquor and meat about 400 years to wipe out that species, which had been fine for thousands here.
Well, but there are other tribes and so forth that didn't happen with. I mean, they're warlike tribes and so forth. Yeah, some were peaceful and isolated, and some were anywhere they gathered together, though, if they had different tribes, they fought. And before the white man got here.
Not so much. You don't hear that much about the community at Qumran, though. I agree with you. I mean, of course, we hear this in Africa, America. I'm sure that in Australia, the Aborigines fought among tribes. I haven't researched it, but surprisingly, the Essenes, specifically the highest of them, the Ebionites, under James and Judas at Qumran, they didn't seem to have any conflict with anybody except outside government trying to monetize and tax their culture. But I don't know of any other conflict that they ever had.
They're remote, weren't they? From what I've heard, they were remote. They were outside the cities and so forth. They're remote in the desert somewhere.
Yes, so they probably set up camps in ways where they weren't rubbing against other people. And also they had a consciousness that was 100% spiritually against the kind of capitalizing consciousness that would wonder what would happen if they knocked off the camp next door. Like that type of consciousness is something that's kind of...
That's why your ears won't stop ringing and why silence feels impossible.
That may have been bred into us. And I can tell you after 8 years of being vegan, that as a car salesman, I started to reject the process of funneling people into the finance office and making a bunch of money off of it. It really, especially when I discovered the nets of Belial, I realized that I had been commandeered by a process that did not have this person's soul in mind. And so when I started to put my own twist on the process of selling them the car, I made some great connections with people, but my bosses started to look at me sideways like I was the enemy and over-educating my customers and all this stuff. So I'm glad I'm not in that industry anymore. I can truly express what I need to express to people.
Yeah, well, we better wrap it up as we're getting here on. And I have a couple more questions. Graham, how are you going to sell no more painless childbirth? What is he? That doesn't make any sense.
No.
Graham.
It makes sense because this is in line with, all right, we're going to deconstruct civilization, no more medicine, no more.
Who says no more medicine? I don't understand who's saying that. Nobody has said that.
Because how are you going to pay doctors? What are they going to do? Go down to the market and trade an operation for a tomato? You know, I mean, it's medicine takes a lot of resources, and you can't represent resources of the magnitude that a hospital, for example, offers for, you know, people that are like growing stuff in their gardens. I mean, nobody can grow enough stuff in their garden. That's why we have insurance, because everybody pays, and whoever gets sick, then they draw from that money. I mean, insurance is another horrible thing that civilization has created.
They had
I still don't understand who's saying. I mean, medicine 100 years ago, before the Rockefellers, was fine. Plus, there is natural child. There is not. My wife had all three were naturally born. The last two, labor was 2 hours, and they were out.
Well,
the nurse was like, "We didn't even need to be here." So,
well, some women can't.
Were always in pain. Well,
no, a lot of women died in childbirth. Back 2,000 years ago, a lot of women died in childbirth. A lot of kids died after. That's why they had to have a lot of different kids.
The Ebionites were excellent with medicine. John the Baptist was a great example. He had hospitals that were set up in the area.
I think it's when the male-dominated religions came, when we're not allowed to have children, like in the water or other places, or use the right herbs. So, you know, it's the whole Genesis. You will be in pain and all that. But even like my wife and others even women, periods shouldn't even be painful or uncomfortable. That's something that poison the women's body. But again, nobody's talking about going back to like Captain Caveman days or anything.
Well, that's perfect anarchy. If you destroy all the structures that civilizations evolved, that's what you're
that's not anarchy. Let me see one last. Are you eating vegan as a result of your research?
He just said
education, capital veganism, is that the start to recovering Pythagoreanism?
We don't have time to go into this, but I've never heard anybody say this reason for being vegan. I'm vegan because of Chris Newby's book, Krisnewby, and her research about William Bergdorfer, who came out from Fort Detrick and told us about his work in the 1950s, creating Borrelia burgdorferi, a spirochete that was weaponized, and Rickettsia helvetica, a Swiss intracellular weapon that they brought in and weaponized and then sprayed over the U.S. populations. And now our hospitals can't even test for Rickettsia helvetica because it's part of a psychological operation that's ongoing. A lot of our sicknesses are from this intracellular biological weapon, and it's deep, right? You have to read the book. I read that book, and I had been vegan for about 2 years because of the fourth philosophy, but I was experimenting. And then when I found out that the government had been playing with in meat eaters in their digestive tract, I went full bore, and there was not even any cheating after that. And life is better on the other side. And I'm an O type, O blood type, the one that meat eaters say can't turn vegan. It's difficult, but after 2 years, I changed all my gut bacteria, and now I can derive protein in the same levels that a horse does from broccoli, for instance, because I have the same gut bacteria now as a horse. So I can eat like a horse and get the same results. And I'm not trying to brag, but I could beat my 40-year-old self up, and I'm 50 now. I can outrun my 40-year-old self. I bench press 320 pounds. I can run 7 miles in an hour. I'm not trying to brag, but as a 50-year-old that's 6'1", 215 pounds, I've never met anybody that can run as far and as fast as me and is as strong as me. And I'm eating the diet of the rebels that Rome wouldn't even send a contingency of less than 5 to arrest one of them because they would get their ass whipped. And I'm finding out.
I didn't have a whole lot of experience. And so really, to me, it was like a chore.
Why? They don't want us to know this. But our best diet is the diet of the garden. And black magicians walked us into the fall of our own free will. And they told us what they were doing, and all we have to do is step back in the garden. But they don't tell us that part. They give us parables like, well, it could be in the here and now. It's all around you if you want it, right? When Jesus talks about heaven, but it's in the gut. It starts, if your gut bacteria is compromised, everything goes to hell because you've been hijacked on a neurological and behavioral level. Governments knew this thousands of years ago, all the way back to Pythagoras. And he was trying to save us from what was going to happen if we went down that bloody brick road. And we did. We went
They
down.
didn't even know that bacteria existed thousands of years ago. That was a recent discovery. They had no idea.
They knew something. They knew that the diet led to the same behavior that would come from pigs if you fed them all meat.
No, they may have correlated the diet with health or something. That's true.
Behavior.
They didn't know about gut bacteria, though.
They probably didn't. But you know what they called that stuff? They called them demons. And I don't know if you've seen under an electron microscope what the face of these things look like that live in the stomachs of flesh eaters, and that change that makes us really super attracted to it when we smell it. That used to make me really attracted. If you look at their faces, they look like demons. And so they weren't far off because those are the things that are driving.
They have little horns.
They do. They've got they're uglier than any demon that anyone ever came up with in literature before, or illustrated literature before. And so as above, so below, at least in this realm. If you eat bad, you're going to get bad microbial results that hijack the consciousness and cause spiritual problems. There is no revolution that has any chance of surviving in the human species unless we get our diet right first. They hijack that. And that's why it's that important to know that all of this teaching of eat, all food is blessed is based on a demon. You have to break the spell. Whether you're a believer or an unbeliever, we are fully affected by that misteaching now. Atheists love meat. All the atheists I know love flesh, and they love chasing money, and they don't mind taking two wives, so to speak.
Guilt by association.
Right. And they call it 2025 without even batting an eye because they're on board. They're on board the Christian ship.
Many years ago, when people migrated to the northern climates that weren't really friendly for growing food, they depended on the animals instead of food. So I don't think that's a result of any conspiracy or anything. And that's, I think, how it all started.
We're all here because we can eat meat, but we're not supposed to unless we're stuck on an icy peak in a plane wreck, or if we're in a deluge and there's nothing around because we just found land and everything's dead. Then you can start eating people, right? And that's probably why we're all here. But the minute that you get into a tropical environment and you keep eating like it's an ice age, bad news. From the gut bacteria out, you start getting eaten alive. You're only omnivore for a really bad situation. And the fall from grace is that we eat like we're in a really bad situation all the time now. And so that translates into consciousness, how we treat each other, and made it why it was so easy to monetize human interaction, which is it creates a demonic interaction with people. You're constantly thinking of them as prey. And, you can't even have a real relationship in a monetized consciousness scenario.
Well, that's a little extreme, I think.
Eventually, you depend on the only thing that still has stability in that scenario, and it's the government. There's no relationship that can survive the coercion of money, meat, and mind control. But once you understand that what's going on is demonic, then you can use love to beat the demon. But if you don't know what you're up against, then you can't raise to the occasion.
Awesome. Well, we better wrap it up. Again, this has been a fascinating discussion. I'm glad we did it. We've covered a lot of ground. Good questions, everybody. And yes, I will put Nick's book on the show notes, but check it out. It's Christ Is Belial. You can get it on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the usual places. And as always, Nick gives me a lot to think about. I was a vegetarian for 7 years. Maybe I need to go back. I'll let the spirit guide me on this one because it wasn't that hard being a vegetarian. I wasn't a vegan. After a while, I didn't even think about it. It was just there. But everybody has to make their decision. Your path is your path. My path is my path. But I do agree. We cannot fight the empire. If we want to be part of it, we just got to disengage if we want to have any chance, especially for our descendants in the spiritual world. So first, Vance, thanks for keeping us company.
Oh, it's been very interesting. Great debating with you, Nick.
Yes.
Very interesting points of view.
Thank you. I had a good time. I hope everybody else did. And next time, I'd like to come on not as the feature of the show. I'd like to be in the position you were in, Miguel, when you were on History Valley the other day. I don't mind being the quiet one. You did a great
job. If the topic's right, if it's Paul or something that in your wheelhouse, I'll invite you. Yeah, for sure. We could have fun, or maybe we'll have a group discussion or something. We'll figure it out. But yeah, always good to see you, Nick. Thanks for the research you've done, and for everybody else. Tomorrow, we got a show tomorrow. We have an academic. We're going to be talking about one of the most enigmatic goddesses of all time, Hecate, the latest on the goddess Hecate. So it should be a good show tomorrow at noon Central. And then we'll have Kevin Can later this week to talk about how to exorcise archons. Let's see what his solutions are to get rid of this Watikos. But for everybody else, really appreciate you being here. Thanks for those of you who support. And yes, everybody else, have a